Did you see his face when I walked in with my 3 beautiful babies? 5 years of him telling me I was broken, and there I was with not one, not two, but 3 perfect children. They say the best revenge isn't planned. It just happens when you've finally healed enough to live your best life. Sometimes karma works quietly in the background until the perfect moment arrives to deliver justice so beautifully that all you can do is stand back and watch it unfold. Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Johnson, and if you're watching this from somewhere warm and sunny, I'm seriously jealous because it's freezing where I am. But the cold weather gives me the perfect excuse to snuggle up with my little ones and tell you this story. This is how I went from being a woman whose husband abandoned her after my accident, calling me damaged goods and barren, to walking into his baby shower. Yes, the one he invited me to as some sick joke, with my triplets in tow. The look on his face when he realized I had not just one baby, but 3? Absolutely priceless. If you're going through something hard right now, stick around. Trust me, this story might just give you the hope you need. And if you enjoy it, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like mine. But let me start from the beginning. I was 26 years old when I married Julian. I believed in true love and happy endings. I trusted that marriage meant in sickness and in health. I thought that the man who vowed to stand by me before God and our families meant every word he said. What I didn't realize was that Julian had a very specific image of what our life would look like, and when reality didn't match his expectations, he'd simply rewrite the story without me in it. The accident happened just 2 years into our marriage. We were driving home from dinner when another car ran a red light. Julian walked away with minor cuts, but I wasn't so lucky. The impact shattered my pelvis and damaged my spine. The doctors told me I'd likely need a wheelchair for the rest of my life, and the extensive internal damage meant having biological children would be nearly impossible. I still remember Julian sitting in that hospital room, nodding as the doctor explained everything. He squeezed my hand and said all the right things. "We'll get through this together," he promised. Nothing has changed, but I saw something shift in his eyes that day, something cold and distant that hadn't been there before. I just didn't want to acknowledge it. What I didn't know then was that Julian had already started talking to divorce lawyers by the time I was discharged from the hospital. Or that while I was learning to navigate life with a disability, he was navigating dating apps. Or that the woman he'd eventually leave me for, Vanessa, was already in the picture. And I certainly had no idea that 3 years later, he'd have the audacity to invite me to their baby shower, just to show me all the things he claimed I couldn't give him. Would you like me to continue with the rest of this story? Let me know in the comments. Hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss what happens next. Julian and I met in grad school. I was studying education, dreaming of opening my own inclusive preschool someday. He was in business, always talking about the empire he'd built. We were opposites in many ways. I saved pennies for my part-time job while he spent his trust fund on designer clothes, but somehow we worked. "You balance me," he used to say, kissing my forehead. "You keep me grounded." I believed we complemented each other perfectly. My practicality tempered his extravagance. His ambition pushed me to dream bigger. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I didn't hesitate. My parents warned me we were rushing, but I shut down their concerns. "When you know," I insisted. Our wedding was everything Julian wanted, lavish. Photographed for a local magazine, with 300 guests, most of whom I'd never met. My father pulled me aside during the reception. "Morgan, are you sure about this? That man looks at you like you're an accessory, not a partner." I dismissed him with a laugh. "Dad, you're being old-fashioned. Julian's just excited to show me off." The first year of marriage was blissful. We bought a beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood, mostly with Julian's family money, though he let me believe my teaching salary made a difference. We talked about having children, but Julian always said, "Not yet. Let's enjoy being young first." His best friend Marcus was always around, with his wife Ava, who quickly became my closest friend. The 4 of us did everything together: dinners, vacations, game nights. Ava saw things about Julian I refused to see. "He talks over you," she pointed out once. "Have you noticed that?" I hadn't, but once she mentioned it, I couldn't stop noticing. How he'd interrupt me mid-sentence. How he'd correct my stories. How he'd dismiss my ideas with a patronizing smile. But I made excuses. He's just passionate, I'd say. Or, he needs to feel important. I was a pro at justifying his behavior. Then came the accident. 3 months into my recovery, Julian stopped coming to my physical therapy sessions. "I've got meetings," he'd say. Or, "You're doing great on your own." Ava started taking me instead. She'd sit quietly while I struggled through exercises, never pushing, never pitying, just present. One day, as she was driving me home, she asked, "Have you noticed Julian's been taking a lot of business trips lately?" I had. 3 in the past month alone. "And have you met his new assistant, Vanessa?" I hadn't. "Morgan." She gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I think there's something you should know." That night, I checked Julian's phone while he showered. The evidence was all there. Texts. Hotel reservations. Photos. A 2-month affair with his 24-year-old assistant. The tall, blonde former cheerleader type he'd always claimed wasn't his type. When he came to bed, I placed his phone on his pillow, open to a particularly explicit exchange. "What is this?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he sighed like I was the one inconveniencing him. "Morgan, be realistic. Things have changed. You've changed." "Because of the accident?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A car crash I didn't cause? "It's not just the wheelchair," he said, as if discussing a mildly disappointing dinner. "The doctor said you probably can't have children. You know how important family is to me." "We could adopt," I countered. "We could use a surrogate. There are options." He laughed, actually laughed. "I want my own children. My own bloodline." "Is that so wrong?" That night, he slept in the guest room. The next morning, he left for work without a word. When he returned, he had divorce papers. "I've been more than generous," he said, sliding them across our kitchen island. "You get the condo I bought as an investment property, a settlement that will keep you comfortable, and I'll cover your medical expenses for the next 5 years. My lawyers think it's too much, honestly." I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. And in return? A clean break. No messy court battle. No embarrassing details made public. Translation: don't tell anyone I'm leaving my disabled wife because she might not be able to have children. I signed the papers. Not because I wanted his money, but because I suddenly couldn't stand the thought of fighting to keep a man who could discard me so easily. The divorce was finalized quickly. Julian moved Vanessa into our home, my home, within weeks. I relocated to the condo, a modern but soulless space that felt nothing like home. I fell into depression, barely leaving except for medical appointments. 6 months later, Ava showed up at my door with takeout and tough love. "Enough," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "You've given him enough of your life." Marcus had ended their friendship after Julian's betrayal, disgusted by how he'd treated me. They wanted me to know I wasn't alone. That night, something shifted in me. The fog of betrayal began to lift, and in its place came determination. Julian had taken my marriage, my home, my self-esteem. But I wouldn't let him take my future too. The next day, I called Dr. Rivera, the fertility specialist Julian had refused to see with me. "I'd like to discuss my options," I said. "All of them." What happened next would change everything, not just for me, but for Julian too. And he wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. Dr. Rivera's office was warm and inviting, nothing like the cold, clinical settings I'd come to associate with medical appointments. She reviewed my records carefully, her expression betraying nothing until she'd finished. "Morgan, I want to be honest with you," she said, removing her glasses. "Your injuries have created significant challenges. The damage to your reproductive system means natural conception would be extremely difficult, though not necessarily impossible." I nodded, having heard similar assessments before. "However," she continued, leaning forward, "there are options. IVF with potential surrogacy is one path. Your ovaries weren't damaged in the accident, which means we could harvest eggs. The question is whether your body could sustain a pregnancy." What are the risks? I asked. Considerable, she admitted. But I've worked with patients in similar situations. If you're willing to undergo extensive testing and possibly multiple rounds of treatment, there's a path forward. I left with a folder full of information, a preliminary treatment plan, and a bill for the consultation that made my stomach clench. The settlement from Julian wouldn't cover multiple rounds of IVF, surrogacy fees, and my regular expenses. I'd need to make hard choices. That night, I called my parents. We hadn't been close since the wedding. Julian had subtly isolated me from them, painting their concerns as interference. Now, I swallowed my pride and told them everything. "We're coming," Mom said immediately. "Pack a bag. You're staying with us until you figure this out." "Mom, I can't just—" "Morgan Johnson," she interrupted, using my full name like when I was a child. "You've been alone too long. Let us help you." 2 days later, I moved into my childhood bedroom in Pittsburgh. Dad converted their home office into an accessible bathroom for me. Mom, a retired nurse, took over coordinating my medical care. For the first time since the accident, I felt safe. With my housing costs eliminated, I redirected my settlement money toward fertility treatments. The first rounds of testing were brutal, physically and emotionally. Each disappointing result felt like Julian's voice in my ear. "You're broken. You can't do this." Through it all, Ava called daily from back home. 6 months after my move, she and Marcus visited with shocking news. "Julian and Vanessa are engaged," Ava said, watching me carefully for my reaction. I surprised myself by laughing. "That was fast." "There's more," Marcus added grimly. "Vanessa's pregnant. They're telling everyone it's a miracle baby, conceived despite fertility issues." My blood ran cold. Fertility issues? Vanessa has fertility issues? "No," Ava said quietly. "They're saying you were the problem. That Julian tried for years with you, but you couldn't conceive. They're spinning a narrative where he reluctantly left to fulfill his dream of having a family." The injustice burned like acid. Julian had never even tried to have children with me. He'd always deflected, saying we should wait. Now he was rewriting our history, making me the defective one. That night, I cried until I had nothing left. The next morning, I called Dr. Rivera. "I want to try," I said. "Whatever it takes. I want to try everything." What followed were the hardest 8 months of my life. Multiple egg retrievals. Failed implantation attempts. My body rejecting embryos. My savings dwindling. My parents quietly selling their timeshare to help fund the treatments. Then came a devastating blow. Julian's lawyers contacted me. The 5-year medical support was being challenged. He claimed financial hardship due to family obligations. My lawyer was blunt. "He's cutting you off because the baby's coming. He wants to redirect all resources to his new family." I'd been counting on that support for ongoing care related to my disability. Without it, continuing fertility treatments would be impossible. That night, I wheeled myself out to my parents' backyard and screamed at the sky until my throat was raw. This man had taken everything from me, and now he was taking my future children too. Dad found me there, wrapped me in a blanket, and said something I'll never forget. "Morgan, you are not defined by what that man took from you. You are not defined by what your body can or cannot do. You are defined by how you rise." The next morning, Dr. Rivera called with unexpected news. "Morgan, we've had a cancellation. There's a specialist in experimental fertility treatments visiting from Johns Hopkins next week. He's taking on 3 consultation cases. I submitted your file, and he's interested in meeting you." Dr. Ethan Chun was nothing like I expected. Young, straightforward, with none of the patronizing sympathy I'd grown accustomed to from medical professionals. "Your case is complex but not hopeless," he said after reviewing my records. "I'm working on a new protocol for patients with similar injuries. It's experimental, still in clinical trials. The success rate is low, about 22%, but that's better than your current odds." "What's the catch?" I asked, having learned there was always a catch. 2 things. First, we would attempt multiple embryo transfers to increase chances of success. This means potentially carrying multiples, which adds risk. Second, the trial is funded by a research grant. If you qualify and are accepted, treatment would be covered. I stared at him, hardly daring to hope. Completely covered?
Yes.
But you'd need to relocate to Baltimore for at least 6 months for monitoring. And I have to be clear, the chances of success are still relatively low. When do we start? I asked without hesitation. 2 weeks later, I was approved for the trial. My parents helped me pack up and find an accessible apartment in Baltimore. I said goodbye to my job, my support group, my routine, everything familiar, and dove into the unknown. The treatments were grueling. Daily injections, constant monitoring, side effects that left me nauseated, swollen, and exhausted. Some nights, I questioned everything. Was I doing this for myself, or to prove Julian wrong? Was I risking my health for a dream that might never materialize? Then came the day of the transfer. 3 viable embryos, my absolute limit for safety. As Dr. Chin performed the procedure, I closed my eyes and made a promise to these potential lives. If you stay, I'll give you everything I have. A life full of love. 2 weeks later, I sat in Dr. Chen's office, hands trembling as he entered with my results. "Morgan," he said, his professional demeanor cracking with a smile, "the test is positive. And based on your HCG levels, I'd say there's a good chance more than one embryo implanted successfully." In that moment, everything changed. Every sacrifice, every tear, every moment of pain had led to this. I was pregnant. Against all odds, against Julian's predictions, against medical probabilities, I was pregnant. What I didn't know then was that this miracle would lead to an even more dramatic confrontation with the man who discarded me. And that karma was just getting started. The first ultrasound at 8 weeks revealed what Dr. Chin had suspected. I wasn't just pregnant. I was pregnant with triplets. 3 tiny heartbeats flickered on the screen, each one a miracle, each one defying every obstacle Julian had placed in my path. Triplets carry significant risks, Dr. Chin cautioned, his expression serious. Especially given your medical history. We'll need to monitor you very carefully. I nodded, still staring at the screen. I understand. Morgan. He placed a hand on my shoulder. This will be extremely challenging. Physically demanding in ways you can't imagine right now. Your disability adds complications. Are you prepared for this?
Was I?
I had no partner, limited mobility, and would soon be responsible for 3 babies. By medical standards, my pregnancy was already high risk. By practical standards, what I was attempting seemed impossible. Yes, I said firmly. I've never been more ready for anything. As my first trimester progressed, my body transformed in ways that tested my resolve daily. Morning sickness hit me like a tsunami, except it wasn't just morning, but all day. My wheelchair became increasingly uncomfortable as my body changed. Basic tasks grew more challenging. Even transferring from my wheelchair to my bed became a calculated risk as my center of gravity shifted. At 16 weeks, I received a call from my lawyer. "Morgan, I have news about your medical support payments," she said. "Julian's filed for a complete termination of financial responsibility." "He can't do that," I argued. The divorce settlement was clear. He's claiming the settlement was negotiated under false pretenses. He says you've misrepresented your medical condition.
What? How?
She sighed. He submitted affidavits claiming you've been seen walking, that your disability is largely exaggerated, and that you're misusing funds intended for medical care. The accusation stole my breath. That's a lie. I haven't walked more than a few steps with support since the accident. I believe you, Morgan. But we'll need to fight this in court. Possibly with independent medical evaluations. Court appearances. Medical examinations. Legal fees. All while carrying triplets in a high-risk pregnancy. There's something else, she continued hesitantly. Julian's filing includes statements from mutual acquaintances claiming you've spoken about undergoing fertility treatments. He's arguing that since the settlement didn't explicitly cover elective procedures like IVF, he shouldn't be responsible for any related costs. The betrayal cut deep. Someone in our circle was feeding Julian information about my life, my choices, my medical decisions. That night, I called Ava in tears. Morgan, I swear I haven't told anyone about your treatments, she insisted. Not even my sister. Then how does he know? I demanded. How, Ava? The silence on the line stretched uncomfortably before she finally spoke. There's something I haven't told you. I didn't want to upset you.
My heart sank. What?
Julian's been asking about you, casually, at social events, pretending it's just friendly concern. How's Morgan doing? Is she adjusting well? People don't realize what he's doing. Which is what, exactly? Gathering ammunition, she said bluntly. And creating a narrative. He and Vanessa have been telling everyone that leaving you was the hardest decision of his life, but necessary for his mental health. They're painting him as the victim who sacrificed his own happiness to care for you until he couldn't anymore. The calculated cruelty of it left me speechless. While I'd been fighting for my future, Julian had been systematically destroying my past. There's more, Ava continued reluctantly. They're having a boy. The nursery is already set up. Blue everything. Julian's father is ecstatic about having a grandson to carry on the family name. I placed a protective hand over my growing belly, where my own children, whose genders I didn't yet know, were developing. Morgan, Ava's voice lowered. People are starting to ask me why I'm still friends with you. Julian's created this image of you as bitter and unstable. He tells everyone he tries to help you, but you reject it out of spite. 2 days later, I received a formal notice of a court hearing regarding my medical support. It was scheduled for exactly 1 week after my anatomy scan, the ultrasound that would tell me if my babies were developing normally. The pressure was becoming unbearable. My pregnancy symptoms intensified daily. The legal battle threatened my financial stability. And somewhere back home, Julian was systematically erasing who I had been and replacing it with his fictional version. At my 20-week appointment, Dr. Chen's expression was grave as he conducted the ultrasound. Baby A looks good, he said, pointing to the screen. Good heart rate, development on track. I held my breath. Baby B also looks good overall, though the heartbeat is slightly faster than I'd like.
We'll monitor that.
My hands gripped the examination table. Baby C. He paused, adjusting the wand, is smaller than the others. There's what we call intrauterine growth restriction happening. What does that mean? I asked, my voice small. It means this baby isn't growing as quickly as the others. The placental blood flow isn't optimal. But they'll be okay, right? All 3 of them. Dr. Chen turned off the machine and helped me sit up. Morgan, I need to be direct with you. Carrying triplets to term is rare. Carrying them to term with your medical history is even rarer. And now with baby C showing signs of distress. Tell me what to do, I interrupted. Whatever it takes. Bed rest? Medication?
Tell me.
Bed rest, yes. Immediately. I want to start steroid injections to help their lung development in case of premature birth. And you need support, not just medical but practical. Is there someone who can stay with you? I thought of my parents, already stretched thin financially by helping me. Of Ava, back home with her own life. Of the empty apartment I returned to each night, where I struggled to prepare meals, to dress myself, to manage the most basic tasks as my body grew more unwieldy. I'll figure something out, I said. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. Heard you're pregnant. Julian knows. Vanessa is furious. Be careful. 2 days later, my parents arrived unannounced at my apartment. We've taken leave from work, Mom said, wheeling in a suitcase. We're staying until the babies come. But your jobs, the house, are less important than you and our grandchildren, Dad finished firmly. That night, as I lay in bed with my mother applying cream to my swollen feet, my phone buzzed with an email. It was from Julian's assistant, not Vanessa, but someone new. Mr. Whitfield requested I send you this invitation. He and Miss Coleman would be honored if you would attend their baby's shower next month. Attached was a formal invitation with cursive script and blue balloons. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Morgan, would love for you to help us celebrate our miracle baby. After all, you know how much having a family means to me. Julian. I showed my mother, expecting her to be as horrified as I was. Instead, she read it, handed it back, and said something that changed everything. Perfect. Now, we know exactly when to show him what he threw away. The court hearing fell on a rainy Tuesday. I sat in my wheelchair, 24 weeks pregnant with triplets, facing the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. Julian wouldn't meet my eyes, instead whispering with his attorney and occasionally glancing at my rounded belly with poorly disguised shock. Vanessa sat behind him, her own pregnancy showing prominently in her fitted maternity dress. She wore Julian's grandmother's emerald pendant, the one he'd promised would be mine to pass down to our children. My attorney presented medical documentation of my ongoing treatments related to the accident. Julian's attorney countered with photos, me at a coffee shop, me at a doctor's appointment, me being helped into a car by my father. As you can see, Your Honor, Julian's lawyer argued, Miss Johnson's condition appears significantly improved. Our contention is that she's misrepresented the severity of her disability to secure excessive financial support. My attorney objected. These photos show nothing more than typical activities for someone with Ms. Johnson's level of disability. She still requires a wheelchair for mobility and ongoing medical care. The judge reviewed the documentation with a frown. Mr. Whitfield, the settlement agreement doesn't specify that payments are contingent on Ms. Johnson's disability remaining at the same level. In fact, I would think you'd be pleased that your ex-wife's health has improved. Julian leaned forward. Your Honor, if I may. You may not, the judge interrupted. Speak through your counsel. Julian's attorney cleared his throat. Your Honor, we have reason to believe Ms. Johnson is using funds intended for legitimate medical expenses to finance elective fertility treatments. The judge turned to me, noting my obvious pregnancy. Is this true, Ms. Johnson? Before I could respond, my attorney intervened. Your Honor, my client's medical decisions are private. The settlement agreement provides for general medical support, not specific treatments. Mr. Whitfield forfeited any say in Ms. Johnson's reproductive choices when he divorced her, citing her supposed infertility as a reason. Julian's face flushed with anger. Furthermore, my attorney continued, my client's fertility treatments were covered by a research grant, not Mr. Whitfield's support payments. The judge considered this, then delivered his ruling. Julian would continue medical support payments as outlined in our divorce settlement, but a financial auditor would review my medical expenses quarterly to ensure compliance. As we left the courtroom, Julian caught up to me in the hallway. Triplets? He asked, staring at my belly. Is that why you look so huge? Julian, Vanessa hissed, pulling at his arm. I met his gaze steadily.
Yes.
3 babies. That's impossible, he scoffed. The doctors said it would be extremely difficult, not impossible. I corrected. Maybe if you'd stayed for any of my appointments instead of abandoning me the minute things got hard, you'd know that. His expression darkened. Don't pretend this is some miracle, Morgan. We both know what you did. How much did these fertility treatments cost?
Who paid for them? Because it wasn't you.
Actually, it was a clinical trial, I said. Completely covered. And yes, it was a miracle. 3 miracles, actually. Vanessa tugged harder on his arm. We need to go. Julian leaned closer. Does it burn you inside, knowing I'm having a son? A healthy, perfect boy who'll carry on my family name? While you're risking your life with some experimental procedure that'll probably end in disaster. My mother, who'd been parking the car, appeared behind me. Is there a problem here? Julian straightened, his public face sliding back into place. No problem at all, Mrs. Johnson. Just catching up with Morgan. Congratulations on the grandchildren. As they walked away, Vanessa glanced back at me, her expression unreadable. That night, as my parents helped me into bed, I felt a sharp pain low in my abdomen. Mom, I gasped, something's wrong. 6 hours later, I lay in a hospital bed, monitors strapped to my belly, listening to the rapid heartbeats of my babies as Dr. Chin explained what was happening. You're experiencing preterm labor contractions. We've given you medication to stop them, but your blood pressure is dangerously high. This is preeclampsia, and it's serious. What does this mean for the babies?
I asked.
At 24 weeks, they're extremely premature. If born now, their chances of survival are about 50 to 60%, but the risks of complications are significant. And if we can stop the labor, every day they stay inside improves their odds. But your health is deteriorating. We need to balance their needs against yours. He prescribed complete bed rest, more medications, and daily monitoring. For the next week, I didn't leave the hospital as they struggled to stabilize my condition. During that time, Ava flew in to visit. Her face was drawn with worry as she sat beside my hospital bed. "Morgan, there's something I need to tell you," she said, clutching my hand. "I know who's been feeding information to Julian." My heart sank. "Who?" "Rebecca from our old book club. She works at the fertility clinic back home. When you called for your records, she recognized your name." Rebecca, a woman I'd spent countless evenings with, sharing wine and stories. Someone I'd considered a friend. "How did you find out?" I asked. Marcus overheard her at a party, bragging about how she'd helped Julian dodge a bullet by warning him about your fertility treatments. The betrayal stung, but distantly, as if it were happening to someone else. My focus had narrowed to a single goal: keeping my baby safe. "There's more," Ava continued reluctantly. "Julian and Vanessa's baby shower is this weekend. They've been telling everyone they invited you as an olive branch, but that you're too bitter to attend." "They're saying I declined?" I asked, confused. "They never expected you to come, Morgan. The invitation was just for show, so they could tell everyone how they tried to include you, but you refused." That night, alone in my hospital room, I scrolled through social media and found photos from Vanessa's pregnancy journey. Professional maternity shoots in flowing gowns. Nursery decoration updates. Baby shower planning details, with Julian tagged in every post. The caption on the latest photo read, "Can't wait to celebrate our miracle with friends and family this weekend." This journey hasn't been easy, but some dreams are worth fighting for. #BabyWhitfield, #MiracleBaby. As if Julian had been the one fighting for a child. As if he knew anything about what that struggle really meant. The next morning, Dr. Chin arrived with grim news. "Baby C's condition is worsening," he said quietly. "The blood flow through the umbilical cord is becoming restricted. We need to consider an emergency C-section." "But they're too small," I protested. "If we wait, we might lose baby C entirely. And your preeclampsia is severe. You're at risk for seizures, stroke, or organ failure." My mother, who'd barely left my side, asked the question I couldn't form. "What are our options?" "We can perform selective reduction, terminate baby C to improve the chances for the other two and reduce strain on Morgan's body. Or we can deliver all three now and hope for the best. Or we can wait, monitor closely, and risk losing baby C and possibly putting Morgan in greater danger." The room spun around me as the full impact of his words hit. I was being asked to choose between my children, to decide which lives to risk. In that moment, Julian's cruelty, Rebecca's betrayal, the court case, all of it faded away in the face of this impossible choice. No revenge fantasy could matter now. Nothing mattered except the three tiny lives depending on me. "I won't choose between them," I said finally. "Can we try something else?" "Anything?" Dr. Chin considered this, then nodded slowly. "There's an experimental procedure, intrauterine blood transfusion for baby C. It's risky, rarely performed with triplets, but it might buy us time." "Do it," I said without hesitation. As they prepped me for the procedure, I closed my eyes and made a silent promise to all three of my babies. We would survive this, not for revenge, not to prove Julian wrong, but because we deserve to live, to thrive, to be a family. What I didn't know then was that this moment of crisis would lead to a revelation that would change everything I thought I knew about Julian, Vanessa, and the real story behind our divorce. The experimental procedure for baby C was scheduled for the following morning. That night, as my parents took a brief break to shower and change clothes at the apartment, I lay alone in my hospital room, one hand resting on my swollen belly. "Just hold on," I whispered to my babies. "We're fighters, all four of us." My phone buzzed with a text from Ava. "Call me when you can. Important." I dialed her immediately. "Morgan," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "I just heard something at the pre-baby shower dinner. Vanessa got drunk and started talking to her sister in the bathroom. I was in the stall. They didn't know I was there." "What did she say?" I asked, my heart racing. "Julian's been lying about everything. He didn't leave you because you couldn't have children. He left because Vanessa was already pregnant when your accident happened." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" "They were having an affair for months before your accident. When you got injured, he saw an opportunity to leave without looking like the villain. He used your disability and potential infertility as a convenient excuse." My mind raced back through our marriage, recalculating moments, conversations, absences. How many late nights at the office had been spent with her? How many business trips had been covers for their rendezvous? "There's more," Ava continued, hesitation in her voice. "The baby Vanessa's carrying, it isn't Julian's."
What?
"Then whose?" "She doesn't know for sure. Apparently, there was someone else around the same time. She told Julian it's his, but her sister was saying Vanessa's terrified about the birth because the real father is Afro-Latino. If the baby doesn't look like Julian..." I closed my eyes, absorbing this new reality. Julian hadn't just betrayed me. He built our entire divorce on a foundation of lies. And now he was potentially being deceived himself. "Morgan, are you okay?" "I don't know what I am," I admitted. "I need time to process this." After hanging up, I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't quiet. Around midnight, a sharp pain tore through my abdomen, different from the contractions before, deeper, more primal. I reached for the call button, but it slipped from my fingers as darkness edged my vision. The last thing I remember is the rapid beeping of the fetal monitor as alarms began to sound. I woke to harsh fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell of an operating room. Voices moved around me, urgent but controlled. Blood pressure dropping. Placental abruption. Need to deliver now. Dr. Chen's face appeared above me. "Morgan, we need to perform an emergency C-section. Baby C's placenta has detached, and you're hemorrhaging." "But the babies, they're too small," I tried to say, my voice weak. "If we wait, we'll lose baby C for certain, and possibly you too." I nodded, tears streaming down my face as they administered anesthesia. When I next opened my eyes, my mother was beside me, her face etched with worry. "The babies?" I croaked, my throat raw from intubation. She squeezed my hand. "They're in the NICU. 2 pounds each, roughly. They're fighters, Morgan. All 3 of them." Relief flooded me, followed immediately by fear. "Are they okay?" "They're critical but stable," she said carefully. "Baby C, your little girl, she's the most fragile. The boys are doing a bit better." I had sons.
And a daughter.
3 tiny humans who'd been ripped from my body at 25 weeks gestation. "When can I see them?" A shadow crossed her face. "There's something else, sweetheart. You lost a lot of blood. There were complications." The grave tone in her voice sent ice through my veins. "What kind of complications?" "The hemorrhaging was severe. They had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to save your life." The words hit me like a physical blow. My uterus gone. The possibility of ever carrying another child gone. After everything I'd fought through to have these babies, my body would never experience pregnancy again. "Morgan," Mom continued gently, "you developed something called DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation. Your blood wasn't clotting properly. You've had multiple transfusions." "How bad is it?" I whispered. "You're stable now, but it was touch and go for a while. You'll need to stay in the ICU for at least a few days." Hours later, a nurse wheeled my bed to the NICU so I could see my children. Nothing could have prepared me for the sight of them, impossibly tiny, translucent skin stretched over underdeveloped bodies, tubes and wires connecting them to machines that kept them alive. "Baby A is Elijah," the neonatologist explained. "Baby B is Isaiah. And baby C is your little girl, Zora. She's the smallest at just under 2 pounds." Through tears, I reached a finger into the isolette, gently touching Zora's miniature hand. Her entire palm was smaller than my fingernail. "Fight," I whispered to her. "Please fight." The next weeks passed in a blur of beeping machines, medical updates, and devastating setbacks. Isaiah developed a brain bleed. Elijah's lungs collapsed twice. Zora struggled with a heart condition that might require surgery. Meanwhile, my own recovery stalled. The hysterectomy wound became infected, requiring additional surgery. My savings evaporated under the weight of medical bills not covered by insurance. Even with my parents' help, financial ruin loomed. Then came the blow I hadn't anticipated. My father suffered a heart attack, likely triggered by the stress of the situation. He was hospitalized back home in Pittsburgh, leaving my mother torn between her husband and her daughter. "Go," I insisted when she hesitated. "Dad needs you. I'll manage somehow." After she left, I found myself truly alone for the first time since the baby's birth. The hospital social worker helped arrange for a home health aide to assist once I was discharged, but it wouldn't be enough. 3 premature infants would require round-the-clock care, and I couldn't even care for myself properly. One night, as I sat beside Zora's isolette watching her fight for every breath, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a social media post from Julian, a professional photo of him and Vanessa at their baby shower, surrounded by blue balloons and expensive gifts. The caption read, "Celebrating our miracle boy. Can't wait to meet our perfect son in just a few weeks. #blessed." The stark contrast between their celebration and my reality crushed something inside me. While they posed for pictures with their designer nursery items, I watched monitors to make sure my baby's hearts kept beating. The next day brought devastating news. Zora needed emergency heart surgery. The procedure carried significant risks, but without it, she wouldn't survive. "The surgery costs are substantial," the cardiac surgeon explained gently. "I understand your insurance situation is complicated." I nodded numbly. My policy would cover only a portion. The remainder would push me into bankruptcy. "Do it," I said. "Whatever she needs." As they wheeled Zora to surgery, I felt something inside me break. I'd lost my marriage, my health, my reproductive organs, my financial stability, and now might lose my daughter. The weight of it all finally crushed my spirit. Alone in the NICU bathroom, I sobbed until no more tears would come. For the first time since Julian had left me, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe I should have accepted that my body wasn't meant to carry children. Maybe this suffering was the universe's way of punishing my defiance. Hours later, the surgeon emerged from Zora's procedure. "We've repaired the defect," he said, "but the next 48 hours are critical. She's very weak." That night, I kept vigil beside her isolette, watching the tiny rise and fall of her chest, listening to the rhythmic beeping of her monitor. My body ached from the wheelchair, from surgery, from grief. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I'm sorry I couldn't give you a better start. I'm sorry you have to fight so hard." As dawn broke, a nurse touched my shoulder gently. "Ms. Johnson, you have a visitor." I turned, expecting perhaps Ava or a hospital social worker. Instead, I found myself looking up at Vanessa Coleman, her pregnancy now in its final weeks, standing awkwardly in the NICU doorway. "Morgan," she said, her voice barely audible. "I need to talk to you." I stared at Vanessa in disbelief. Her presence in the NICU, this sacred space of my suffering, felt like a violation. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. Vanessa glanced nervously at the tiny forms in their isolettes. "I know. I needed to see you. Alone." The nurse looked between us. Should I ask her to leave? I considered it, then shook my head. "No. We'll talk outside." In a small waiting area just beyond the NICU, I positioned my wheelchair across from Vanessa, creating as much distance between us as the small room allowed. Up close, I could see the strain beneath her perfect makeup, dark circles poorly concealed, a tightness around her eyes. "I have 5 minutes," I said. "My daughter just had heart surgery." Vanessa winced. "I heard. I'm sorry." "Why are you here?" She twisted her hands in her lap, the enormous diamond on her finger catching the fluorescent light. I overheard Ava at the baby shower. I know she told you about the baby. That it might not be Julian's? I kept my voice neutral. Yes. She exhaled shakily. It's true. I don't know for certain who the father is. And you're telling me this because? Because Julian's been lying to everyone. He's created this narrative where he's the victim who had to leave his disabled wife to have the family he always wanted. She met my eyes directly. But we were seeing each other for almost a year before your accident. Despite Ava's warning, hearing Vanessa confirm it sent a fresh wave of pain through me. A year? She nodded. I got pregnant about 2 months before your accident. When it happened, Julian saw an opportunity. He could leave you without looking like the bad guy. I laughed bitterly. How considerate of him. I know how it sounds, she said. But there's more you don't know. Julian's father changed his will after you got injured. The inheritance Julian's counting on is contingent on him producing a legitimate male heir. So, you're telling me Julian left me not just because he was already cheating with you, but for money? $20 million, Vanessa confirmed. That's what's at stake with this baby. If it's a boy, and if it's Julian's, his father releases the trust fund immediately. If not, everything stays locked up until his father dies. The calculated cruelty of it all made me physically ill. Does his father know about your uncertainty regarding paternity? No one knows except my sister. And now you. She placed a protective hand over her belly. Julian's already had the nursery painted blue. He's told everyone it's a boy. Is it? I asked. Her eyes filled with tears. Yes. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her confession hanging between us. Why tell me this now? I finally asked. What do you want from me? I saw your babies, she whispered. They're so small, so fragile. I heard the nurses talking about your daughter's surgery, about the medical bills. And I realized. She trailed off. Realized what? That I'm trapped in a nightmare of my own making. Her composed exterior cracked, revealing raw fear beneath. Julian isn't who I thought he was. The things he says about you when we're alone. The way he talks about making sure you get nothing more from him. A chill ran through me. Is he hurting you? Not physically, she said carefully. But he's controlling. Obsessed with appearances. With his family legacy. If this baby isn't his, if it doesn't look like him, I don't know what he'll do. I studied her. This woman who'd been both victim and accomplice in the destruction of my marriage. Again, why come to me? What do you want? She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out an envelope. This is a cashier's check for $250,000. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. What? It's from my personal savings, before Julian got access to my accounts. Take it. Use it for your baby's medical care. Why would you do this? Because I need to do one right thing before my life implodes, she said simply. And because I need your help. My help, I repeated incredulously. With what? Julian's going to leave me when he finds out this baby might not be his. I know that. But before that happens, I need to secure my future, my baby's future. She leaned forward. The baby shower was photographed for his father's benefit. There's going to be a follow-up event after the birth, a formal introduction of the Whitfield heir. I waited, not understanding where this was going. The invitation we sent you, it wasn't just Julian being cruel. It was his father's idea. He wants to show everyone how magnanimous the family is, inviting the discarded first wife. Julian never expected you to come. In fact, he's been telling everyone you declined out of bitterness. But you want me to come, I guessed. She nodded. I want you to come with your triplets, the babies Julian said you couldn't have. I want his father to see what Julian threw away. I want everyone to know that Julian left you because he was cheating, not because you were broken. You want me to help you destroy him, I said slowly. As what? Revenge for what he might do to you? As insurance, she corrected. If Julian's father sees the truth about why he really left you, sees your healthy babies, the trust fund conditions might change. He might include protections for my child regardless of paternity. He's old-fashioned, but he values family above all. I looked at the check in my hand. Enough money to cover Zora's surgery, to help with the overwhelming medical costs, to give us breathing room. "This feels wrong," I said. "Taking your money." "Consider it restitution," she replied. "Not just from me, but from Julian. He's hidden assets from the divorce settlement. This is a fraction of what he owes you." I thought of my tiny babies fighting for life, of my decimated savings, of my father's heart attack. I thought of Julian's lies, not just to me, but to everyone. The narrative he'd constructed where I was defective, where he was the victim. "If I take this," I said, "it doesn't mean I agree to your plan." "I understand." She stood to leave, then hesitated. "There's one more thing you should know. Julian has evidence that you underwent fertility treatments, not just the clinical trial, but earlier attempts that you paid for with your settlement money." My blood ran cold.
How?
"Rebecca from your old book club. She works at the clinic. She's been feeding him information from your medical records." "That's illegal," I said.
Yes.
"And Julian's been paying her to do it." She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of payment transfers with Rebecca's name. "This is his Venmo. I accessed his account while he was sleeping." I stared at the evidence of Julian's systematic campaign against me, feeling strangely calm. Something was crystallizing inside me, a clarity I hadn't felt since before the accident. "Why would you betray him like this?" I asked. Her hand moved to her belly again. "Because my baby deserves better than a father who would destroy an innocent woman to protect his image and inheritance." After she left, I sat alone in the waiting room, the check in my hand, my mind racing with possibilities. The money could save Zora. It could provide specialized care for all 3 babies. It could secure housing that accommodated both my disability and 3 infants. But accepting it meant aligning myself with Vanessa, the woman who'd helped destroy my marriage. As I wrestled with this decision, my phone lit up with a text from Dr. Chen. "Zora's stats improving. She's fighting hard." In that moment, something shifted inside me. My focus had been so consumed by survival, by grief, by the daily fight to keep my babies alive, that I'd lost sight of the bigger picture. Julian hadn't just betrayed me. He'd actively worked to destroy me, using my medical records illegally, spreading lies, creating a false narrative where I was defective and bitter. I wheeled myself back into the NICU and positioned my chair between my 3 babies' isolettes. "We're going to be okay," I promised them. "And someday, we're going to show everyone the truth." I texted Vanessa a single word. "When?" Her reply came seconds later. 3 weeks. After my delivery. "Can your babies travel by then?" I looked at my tiny fighters, each one gaining grams daily, each one defying the odds. "They'll be ready," I wrote back. "We all will be." The next morning, I deposited Vanessa's check and called the hospital billing department. As I arranged to pay for Zora's surgery in full, I felt a strange sense of peace. The money wasn't just financial salvation, it was ammunition in a battle I hadn't realized I was still fighting. Julian had tried to erase me, to replace me with a fiction that served his narrative. But he'd underestimated one crucial fact. I wasn't the same woman he'd abandoned. I was stronger now. And I had 3 perfect reasons to finally stand up and reclaim my truth. The next 3 weeks transformed both my body and spirit. As I recovered from the hysterectomy and infection, my strength gradually returned. My father's condition stabilized, allowing my mother to split her time between Pittsburgh and Baltimore. The physical therapist who visited daily remarked on my determination as I pushed to regain independence. But the most miraculous changes happened in the NICU. My triplets, born barely viable at 25 weeks, defied every statistical probability. Elijah's lung function improved dramatically. Isaiah's brain bleed resolved without permanent damage. And Zora, my tiniest fighter, surprised even Dr. Chun with her recovery after heart surgery. "I've never seen preemies this young show such remarkable progress," he told me during rounds one morning. "They're extraordinarily resilient. By the time the triplets were 5 weeks old, they had each surpassed 3 pounds, still dangerously small, but a tremendous improvement. Their skin had transitioned from translucent to a healthy caramel brown. Their eyes were open and alert, and they could maintain their body temperature outside the isolates for short periods. Do you think they could travel back home in a week? I asked Dr. Chen cautiously. He frowned. Travel? Morgan, these babies shouldn't leave the hospital for at least another month, ideally longer. I explained about Julian's post-birth celebration, about the opportunity to finally expose his lies. Dr. Chen listened skeptically. Is revenge worth risking their health? He asked. It's not revenge, I clarified. It's reclaiming our narrative. These babies deserve to enter the world with the truth about their mother, not Julian's twisted version of me. After consulting with a neonatologist, we reached a compromise. If the babies continued improving at their current rate, they could leave the hospital for a brief, carefully controlled outing. They would travel in a specialized medical transport van with a NICU nurse. The entire trip couldn't exceed 4 hours round trip. I threw myself into preparations. Ava helped coordinate everything from home, securing a venue close to the hospital for us to rest before and after the event. My mother altered 3 identical outfits for the babies, simple white sleepers with tiny embroidered crowns, a nod to their names' meanings: Elijah, Jehovah is God; Isaiah, salvation of the Lord; and Zora, dawn. For myself, I chose a burgundy dress that accommodated my wheelchair while highlighting the strength in my shoulders and arms. I'd lost weight during my medical ordeal, but regular physical therapy had toned my upper body. I no longer looked like the broken woman Julian had discarded. The night before our departure, I received a text from Vanessa. Baby born yesterday.
7 lebes, 2 oziroma.
Healthy. Not Julian's. Coming home tomorrow. Celebration still on for Saturday. I stared at the message, imagining Julian's reaction when he saw his son, and realized the truth. Had he seen the baby yet? Did he already know? My answer came the next morning. Another text from Vanessa, this one accompanied by a photo of a beautiful infant with unmistakably mixed heritage. Warm brown skin, curly black hair, features that clearly didn't match Julian's Nordic coloring. Julian demanded paternity test. Results tomorrow. Father is threatening to cancel trust. Celebration postponed 1 day to Sunday. Still coming. Absolutely, I replied. By Saturday morning, my triplets were cleared for travel. The medical transport team arrived with a specialized vehicle equipped with 3 portable incubators, monitoring equipment, and a NICU nurse named Amber, who would accompany us. They're beautiful, Amber said, examining each baby carefully before the journey. And they're fighters, just like their mom. The 2-hour drive back to my hometown felt surreal. I hadn't been home since moving to Baltimore for the clinical trial. As familiar landmarks appeared, memories of my life with Julian surfaced. The restaurant where he'd proposed, the church where we'd married, the neighborhoods where we'd house-hunted together. We arrived at the small boutique hotel Ava had arranged, where a suite had been converted for medical needs. As the babies were settled, I received another text from Vanessa. Paternity test confirmed. Baby not Julian's. Father enraged. Julian desperate. Celebration still on as Whitfield family welcome. Julian planning to claim baby as his despite results. Be ready for tomorrow. 2 p.m. I showed the message to Ava, who had arrived to help with preparations. He's going to pretend the baby is his? Even with proof it's not, she asked incredulously. $20 million is a powerful motivator, I replied. And Julian's always cared more about appearances than reality. The next morning, as we prepared for the event, I received one final message from Vanessa. Julian knows you're in town. He's panicking. Perfect. The Whitfield family home was a colonial mansion set on 5 acres of manicured grounds. As our medical transport pulled through the gates, I spotted at least 50 luxury vehicles parked along the circular drive. This wasn't just a family gathering, it was a society event designed to introduce the Whitfield heir to Pittsburgh's elite. Ava had gone ahead to scout the situation. She met us at the side entrance, her expression a mix of anxiety and excitement. Everyone's in the main hall. Julian's father is making a speech about family legacy. Vanessa's standing there with the baby, looking like she might throw up. Julian keeps checking his phone. I think he knows you're coming. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. Let's give them a moment to finish the formalities. We'll make our entrance when Julian's at the center of attention. 20 minutes later, Amber and another nurse had the babies ready in their matching outfits. Each was connected to a small, portable monitor disguised by a blanket. My mother adjusted my hair and squeezed my shoulder. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. More than ready. As we approached the main entrance, I could hear Julian's voice carrying through the open doors, grateful to continue the Whitfield legacy with my son. After a difficult journey, our family is finally complete. I signaled to Amber, and she pushed the first stroller through the doors, followed by my mother with the second, and me wheeling myself alongside the third. The room fell silent as heads turned toward our entrance. Julian stood at the front of the gathering, a glass raised in toast. Beside him, Vanessa held a baby wrapped in the Whitfield family christening blanket, an heirloom of blue silk and lace. Julian's father sat in an ornate chair nearby, his expression imperial and satisfied. Until he saw me. Julian's glass froze midair. "Morgan? What are you?" "Hello, Julian," I said, my voice clear and carrying through the silent room. "I thought we should come meet the newest addition to the family. After all, these three should know their half-brother." I gestured to my triplets. "Or, at least, the child you're pretending is your half-brother." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Julian's father leaned forward, his eyes narrowing first at me, then at the triplets, then at the baby in Vanessa's arms. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "I'm sorry we couldn't make the original baby shower," I continued, wheeling further into the room. "We were a bit busy in the NICU. Premature triplets require a lot of medical attention. But they're fighters, just like their mother." Julian's face had drained of color. "You need to leave." "Why?" I asked innocently. "Aren't you happy to see that I could have children after all? Isn't that what you told everyone, that you left me because I couldn't give you a family?" His father turned to him sharply. "What is she talking about?" I continued before Julian could respond. "But that wasn't the real reason, was it, Julian? You didn't leave me because of my accident or because I couldn't have children. You left because Vanessa was already pregnant. You were cheating on me long before the accident." The whispers grew louder. Julian's father stood, his face flushed with anger. "Is this true?" he demanded. "Of course not," Julian spluttered. "She's bitter, delusional." "Show him the paternity test, Julian," Vanessa said suddenly, her voice trembling but determined. "Show everyone." The room erupted in gasps. Julian lunged toward Vanessa, but was blocked by his cousin Marcus, who stepped between them. "You've been paying for illegal access to my medical records," I continued, pulling out printed copies of the Venmo transactions Vanessa had provided. "You've been spreading lies about me to cover up your affair. And now you're pretending that baby is yours, even though you know he isn't." Julian's father snatched the papers from my hand, scanning them with increasing fury. "You used Rebecca Wilson to spy on Morgan's fertility treatments?" he demanded. "You paid for illegal access to medical records?" "It's not what it looks like," Julian insisted. "It's exactly what it looks like," I countered. "Just like that baby is exactly what he looks like, not a Whitfield." Julian's father stepped closer to Vanessa, examining the infant in her arms. The baby's features, so clearly not Julian's, were impossible to deny. "The Whitfield Trust," Julian's father said coldly, "was established to provide for true Whitfield heirs, not for liars and cheats." He turned to me, his expression softening slightly as he looked at my triplets. "These children, they're yours? Biologically?" "Yes," I said. "Conceived through a clinical trial for women with my type of injury. Born at 25 weeks. Every doctor said it was impossible, but here they are." He nodded slowly, then addressed the stunned crowd. "I think we've all been invited under false pretenses. This celebration is concluded." As guests began filing out in shocked silence, Julian grabbed my wheelchair. "You've ruined everything," he hissed. "Are you happy now?" I looked up at him. This man I'd once loved, whose approval I'd once desperately sought, and felt nothing but pity. "I didn't ruin anything, Julian. You did that yourself." I pulled away from his grip. The difference is I built something new from the wreckage. All you've built are more lies. As he stormed away, Julian's father approached me again, this time bending to look more closely at the triplets. They have the Whitfield nose, he observed, surprising me. Strong bloodline. They're Johnsons, I corrected firmly. He straightened, regarding me with newfound respect. You should have been the mother of my grandchildren. I met his gaze steadily. I am the mother of my children. That's enough for me. As we prepared to leave, Vanessa approached with her baby. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. I nodded, suddenly exhausted but lighter than I'd felt in years. The truth had finally been told. My narrative had been reclaimed. And my children, my impossible, miraculous children, would grow up knowing their mother had fought for them, had stood up for herself, and had finally found justice. What none of us realized then was that Julian's father had one final card to play, one that would secure my children's future in ways I never could have imagined. The return journey to the hospital was a blur. Exhaustion from the confrontation mixed with the adrenaline of finally speaking my truth. The babies, miraculously, slept through most of the drive, unaware they had just participated in dismantling years of carefully constructed lies. You did it, Amber said quietly as we neared the hospital. You stood up to him. I nodded, watching the rise and fall of my children's tiny chests.
For them.
Everything is for them now. The following morning, as I sat beside the triplets in their temporary hospital room, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Ms. Johnson? This is Lawrence Whitfield. Julian's father's authoritative voice was unmistakable. I tensed. Mr. Whitfield. I'll be direct. I've spent the night reviewing documentation provided by Vanessa regarding my son's actions. The evidence of his deception is disturbing. I'm sorry, I said automatically, then caught myself. Actually, I'm not sorry. Julian deserves whatever consequences come his way. I agree. His tone was clipped. Julian has been removed as CEO of Whitfield Industries, effective immediately. The trust fund has been frozen pending review by my legal team. I absorbed this in silence, unsure why he was sharing these details with me. However, he continued, my investigation also uncovered information about your situation. Medical bills, housing concerns, the specialization your children will require. With all due respect, Mr. Whitfield, my finances are none of your business. They became my business when my son deliberately violated legal agreements to deprive you of support you were entitled to. He paused. I'd like to meet with you. Today, if possible. My children can't travel again so soon. I'm already in Baltimore. I can come to you. 2 hours later, Lawrence Whitfield entered my hospital room, his imposing frame somehow diminished by the medical setting. He nodded respectfully to my mother before turning his attention to the triplets. May I? He asked, gesturing toward Zora. I nodded cautiously. He approached her isolette with surprising gentleness, studying her tiny features. She looks like my late wife, he said softly. Something about the eyes. Mr. Whitfield, why are you here? He straightened, businesslike, once more. I've spent 40 years building a legacy I believed would continue through my son. Yesterday proved that legacy is built on quicksand. He withdrew an envelope from his suit jacket. These are the revised terms of the Whitfield Family Trust. I'd like you to review them. I opened the envelope hesitantly, scanning the legal document inside. As I read, my heart began to race. This says you're including my children in the trust as equal beneficiaries with any legitimate Whitfield heirs.
Yes.
Elijah, Isaiah, and Zora Johnson will each receive an equal share of the Whitfield fortune upon my death, with educational trusts established immediately to ensure their needs are met. He gestured to another document. Additionally, I've arranged for the purchase of a fully accessible home near the best children's medical center in Pittsburgh. The property will be placed in your name. I stared at him in disbelief. Why would you do this? Because they are Whitfields by blood, regardless of name. Because my son wronged you in ways I cannot fully repair. And because... He hesitated. I failed to see Julian's true character until it was too late. This is my attempt to correct that failure. And Julian? Does he know about this? He will, once the paperwork is filed. I suspect he won't take it well. Lawrence's expression hardened. He'll receive a modest income from the company, but nothing more. His actions have disqualified him from any meaningful participation in the Whitfield legacy.
And Vanessa?
Her baby. They'll be provided for, though separately from the main trust. The child is innocent in all this. After Lawrence left, I sat in stunned silence, the documents spread across my lap. My mother read through them carefully. "This changes everything," she said finally. "Your children will never want for anything." "It feels unreal," I admitted, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. But no other shoe dropped. Instead, the following months brought a series of positive developments that sometimes felt too good to be true. The triplets continued to thrive. By 4 months old, they had all surpassed their growth targets. Zora, once the most fragile, became the most vocal, her tiny demands echoing through the NICU until the day they were finally cleared for discharge. Our new home in Pittsburgh was everything Lawrence had promised: single-level, fully accessible, with a specialized nursery designed for premature triplets. My parents moved into the guest house on the property, providing the support system I desperately needed. Julian attempted to contest the trust revisions, but his position was further weakened when criminal charges were filed regarding his illegal access to my medical records. Rebecca faced charges as well, losing her job and nursing license in the process. 6 months after our confrontation, I received a letter from Vanessa. She had moved to California with her son, Miles, and was building a new life away from Julian's influence. She thanked me again for my role in helping her escape and enclosed a photo of her healthy, smiling baby. As for Julian, his fall from grace was swift and comprehensive. The scandal cost him his reputation, his position, and most of his social connections. The last I heard, he had relocated to Europe, trying to outrun his disgrace. On the triplets' first birthday, a milestone many doctors had doubted they would reach, we held a small celebration at home. As I watched them interact, Elijah already trying to stand, Isaiah methodically deconstructing his cake, Zora commanding attention with her babbling, I marveled at how far we had come. Dr. Chin visited from Baltimore, amazed by their progress. "You've done the impossible," he told me. "Not just keeping them alive, but helping them thrive." "We did it together," I corrected. "All of us." Later that evening, after the guests had left and the babies were asleep, I wheeled myself onto the patio and looked up at the stars. The woman I had been 3 years ago, desperate for Julian's approval, crushed by his abandonment, felt like a stranger now. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who had carried 3 lives against impossible odds. Someone who had faced down lies and emerged with her truth intact. Someone who had rebuilt from ashes and found, in that rebuilding, a more authentic self than she had ever been before. My disability hadn't diminished me. It had revealed my true strength. My children hadn't depleted me. They had expanded my capacity for love. And Julian's betrayal hadn't defined me. It had merely cleared the path for a life more meaningful than the one he had promised. Hey everyone, that's my story. I'm recording this from our backyard, where my 3 little tornadoes are now running circles around their grandfather. Well, Zora's running. The boys are more about strategic crawling at this point. If you're going through something that feels impossible right now, whether it's a health crisis, a betrayal, or just life knocking you down, remember this. Your capacity for resilience is greater than you know. The future you're fighting for might look different than what you imagined, but it can still be beautiful. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of our journey. Next week, I'll share how I finally launched that inclusive preschool I'd always dreamed about, with 3 built-in test subjects. Until then, remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. It's about showing up with triplets when they thought you couldn't have even one. Stay strong, everyone. If I can do this, you can do whatever you're facing too.